Hey, welcome everybody to With Thunderous Applause, a podcast where two friends get together and discuss the events and ideas that will shape our uncertain future. I am your host, Steve, along with my co-host, Zach. What is up?
Hello, nothing much. Just did a lot of work on the chicken and pig sensors. Did several
Very nice.
revisions on the circuitry. Figured out, how to make it so that there was a common ground and a common power supply, and use it that way. Kind of reduces the number of wires and makes the readings more accurate. Because I was like, wow, it's reading 85 degrees inside my house. That is incorrect. What is wrong with this?
Yeah, definitely not in your house.
Hell no. 75,
in my house, perhaps,
maybe.
occasionally.
75 if we're lucky.
Yeah. No, I've been pretty good about it this year.
Yeah.
I think my thermostat we set to 78, and then at 4 o'clock or right before 4 o'clock, we turned it up to 80. And then there's a slow gap where it warms, where we're not paying the fucking top tier
Gotcha.
rate, because everybody is like, I don't know, they pay 2 or 3 cents more per kilowatt between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. Yeah, PG&E is a big piece of shit.
That's why we do the stream at 9.
I know, right? Yeah, exactly. And speaking of pieces of shit, we got a good show for you today.
It's been more than 15 seconds. We're good.
Oh, sorry about that. I'll try and remember. It's the funny, because between the two of us, you were the actual sailor, but I talk like the kind of stereotype of talking like a sailor. That's me. At any rate, yeah, so today we're going to talk a little bit about the entertainment strike, the WG Writers Guild of America and Screen Actors Guild. Just a story that I came across that just we'll discuss, but so many feelings watching this short, like 1 minute clip. So
tree feelings. Yes, great.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that. But most of the show today, we're going to discuss a recent vote in Congress where Congress voted that they did not want to provide oversight to the money we are dispersing to Ukraine and to other various people on behalf of what we consider Ukraine aid, or what Congress considers Ukraine aid. And so since they voted against the audit, we have a great piece. Kaiser, I believe is her name. I forget her first name, but we will update you when we read the piece. But a piece in Gray Zone that kind of breaks some of those things down. And there were 2 items, and a lot of it's kind of innocuous, as we'll show you. But there was a couple items I thought that we could discuss in a little bit more detail. So absolutely. To begin, do you have any final thoughts on setting the agenda before we begin the meeting?
Not at all. The agenda is set. The meeting shall begin in 3, 2, 1.
Striking union members used these trees for shade. Then NBC Universal chopped off the tops of them. Members claim the studio intentionally butchered the tree branches to take away a much-needed source of shade during high temperatures. NBC Universal confirmed that the company trimmed the trees, but denied doing it purposely to make striking more challenging. But whatever the reason, the studio apparently didn't have a tree trimming permit in the first place. The trees outside the studio are managed by the city, and while businesses can get permits to manage trees near their properties, Los Angeles city officials said no permit had been issued for trimmings in the past 3 years at the location in question. Summer, according to a 1994 LA Times article, is also the wrong time of the year to prune landscape trees. The trees cut outside the NBC Universal location are ficus trees, which should be pruned between October and March, or in May or June. Excessive pruning in mid to late summer can disrupt their growth cycle and make them susceptible to freeze damage. The WGA and SAG-AFTRA unions have reportedly each filed unlawful labor practice charges against NBC Universal for creating unsafe conditions at picketing sites, also referencing construction work.
Yeah, so I don't think it will take a very skilled lawyer to argue before the labor board that was done intentionally to suppress labor actions.
I mean, if it was a licensed, arborist, they would have immediately been like, "Oh, this is the wrong time of year for these trees." Like,
right?
Why are we doing this? Like, fine, you're fired.
100% beyond just beyond just the kind of like, oh, they didn't pull a permit and they don't seem to, we keep permit records for 3 years.
Yeah.
And in the last 3 years, they've never asked to prune those trees. They're our trees. We take care of them. We sometimes let them if they ask us, but they never didn't ask.
Right.
And that's the city procedure, is that you have to ask before. I mean, even a smaller city like Chico, you have to freaking check in with the city before you cut trees, because we have certain rules protecting and certain mitigation measures for like large trees, heritage trees, or trees that provide a lot of value in terms of their shade or canopy or whatever.
Right.
And so like suppressing the strike by taking away their ability to control their body heat. And I saw not only, yes, like any competent horticulturalist or arborist or whatever would be like, I mean, you're going to kill the trees. You know, if we prune them right now, they could die.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, fine, new trees are cheaper,
not just by
than
freeze, but like disease, and it weakens them because you take all their energy away and leave them virtually nothing to photosynthesize with.
Well, and then every one of those cuts that's getting, hit by the beating sun is going to dry out real quick.
Yeah, it causes cracking, sun bleaching of the skin. The bark will crack open. There's all manner, especially with a ficus. Like, I don't know them very well, but I think, I mean, they're a fig, right? Like,
I believe so. And I'm remembering from classes about them just being pretty finicky.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of like probably fairly durable under most conditions, but when you take away all their energy and then sun bleach their fucking bark and burn them, like, they're probably never going to recover health-wise, is my guess.
Yeah.
And I hope that the city fines them significantly for removing good shade trees, when like the data shows shade trees improve property values. Shade trees also reduce maintenance costs on fucking roads and sidewalks, because UV, imagine that, is a pretty destructive fucking force.
Well, and then also just the microclimate change, the fact that you are getting a slightly cooler area by those trees.
Yeah, 100%. So it's just shady dealings, and I don't even think it would take a talent.
Shady.
Oh, not so shady dealings.
Nice.
Yeah, sunlit dealings. Yeah, I don't think it'll take a competent attorney to make the case to the labor board or whoever hears that complaint that they did it on fucking purpose.
Yeah.
I just hope there's sufficient follow-up from the city for them essentially attempting to kill what is city trees, and also many of them, and they looked fairly large.
Yeah.
Most of them looked like,
15 feet tall,
healthy, mature trees that have been there for at least a couple decades.
Yeah.
Because the tree's not going to put on a lot of girth very quickly, because it's only getting access to water out of like, I doubt they use permeable pavement, because that's a relatively recent invention. It's considerably more expensive than traditional concrete. So my guess is that those trees don't have a lot of space to grow, and they don't get a lot of water. And therefore a tree of that diameter is probably significantly older than you might think it is, based purely on its size. Yeah. Trees are fucking crazy like that. They're gonna be a little tiny skinny tree, and it's like super old. Like the junipers are like that. Some of those trees are hundreds of years old, and they're only like,
I grew
15 feet high.
Like I grew 100th of a millimeter wide today.
Yeah. And it's it's just the conditions they grow under. The plant still grows,
Oh yeah, they just slow down. When the complex cut down all of our redwoods, like you could absolutely see where it was like, wow, that was a wet year. Because there was one where it was just like, it went from probably like a centimeter up to like 5 or about sorry, not a centimeter, like half a centimeter, like all the way up to like 2.5.
Yeah, just a huge jump.
Oh, yeah.
I think you might have mentioned that, and that was towards the middle, right?
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't even.
And I think my speculation was that was probably supplemental irrigation. So you might see that for a few years, and then once the tree is established and they take it off the irrigation, then your wings shrink. Yeah,
that's when it first tapped into the sewage line.
Yeah, and then any later rings when it taps into the sewage line, then they'll be big again.
Yeah.
At any rate, and there's other factors other than just access to water that affect that. But moving on, we are going to talk now about the Ukraine war. I have a feeling we will be less than an hour today.
Oh yeah. We got a pretty short one today.
And so there's no safeguards, there's no provisions on the flow of this money. Even if you're somebody who supports the ongoing expenditure of hundreds of billions of dollars for a war that the Biden administration itself says has brought us closer to nuclear Armageddon than at any point in 1962, if you're one of the people who believes that's worth it over who rules Eastern Ukraine, at least you should want, in fact, if you're somebody who wants that money going for that, you should, of all people, should want safeguards and monitoring and oversight on where this money is going. And yet the people in Washington who, at least until this week, who have been the most vocal about sending this money over to Kiev have continuously blocked attempts at oversight. So last year, as you might recall, Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, the Republican senator from Kentucky, introduced a bill, an amendment that he tried to latch on to the expenditure of $40 billion.
Linked in the show notes.
That was to go to Ukraine. You might remember that the Biden administration requested $33 billion be expended by the Congress, authorized by the Congress, and they arbitrarily raised it by $7 billion to $40 billion. Every single Democratic member of Congress in both the Senate and the House voted yes to send $40 billion to Ukraine. And most of the Republican caucus did as well. There were 6 or so House Republicans who voted no, and 11 Republican senators who voted no. But the bulk of the Republican Party joined with the unanimous Democratic Party and Bernie Sanders to vote yes. And the Senate was so desperate to get this money approved that they tried to fast track it, which required unanimous consent, and Rand Paul refused to give it because he wanted to impose the condition that there be a new Inspector General office, or rather to require the existing Inspector General, the one that did such a good job in the war in Afghanistan, to now start monitoring, like they did for the war in Afghanistan, where this money is going in Ukraine. And he was laughed out of the Senate by virtually every member of both parties.
Yeah, the little thumbnail he had at the top was like Dems and Bernie. Kill oversight.
I mean, he does. He does like to say he's independent.
Yeah, so I have a lot of feelings about that. I mean, obviously, I think most of us, except maybe my partner, have already given up on fucking already finally, like, came to acceptance in the stages of guilt, or stages of grief, rather, came to acceptance about Bernie Sanders being a fraud, and or at least either a fraud from the beginning or a sellout at best. So none of us are really surprised, but I do think it's important to point out, because when it came to the bill that created the Inspector General for Afghanistan, Bernie was outspoken in favor of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so Rand Paul sought to basically put a provision into this spending bill, this send money to Ukraine bill, put a provision that would expand the duties and responsibilities of that existing office, expand them to include the money they're spending on Ukraine. And I actually, from a lawmaking perspective, that's a really smart way to do it. I would assume it's always easier to expand the role into a related area of an existing office or a set of personnel versus like creating a brand new one and having another fucking layer to the imperial bureaucracy.
And it's less paperwork, so I mean, less work for you.
Right. And apparently, according to Glenn Greenwald, and I do remember some of the reporting on it, but that was the audit, that was like right before we got out of Afghanistan, when the audit was finally like, most of the military command staff on the ground have no fucking clue what the fucking objective is. Like we've been here 20 years and like everybody says this is what we need to do to win. And like, we've just been sitting here not doing there's not really a practical way to win in Afghanistan. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm finding that a lot of places that you would think would adopt templates, like, templates for duties, templates for laws, templates for emails, are not doing so. And it's like, it's governmental, it's in corporations and stuff like that. Like, guys, just templates. That way you just have to fill in a few blanks. Like, make changing things easier for yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And so we have Congress, and there's a second clip to this. So let's play that. You did pause and say, but I'll reiterate here. Both Paul's statement on his bill and then is included in the show notes. And did you separate the link to the bill itself? I fell down the rabbit hole of reading it.
Yeah. Oh my God, it was 23 pages.
Yeah, I mean, it's not actually that bad.
No, it's actually pretty big and narrow.
I mean, I told you just a few weeks ago when I was trying to do, I was trying to look on the China stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't find the provision that says we're not allowed to do that, even though I read through a huge chunk of the appropriations bill. That is spending for every fucking or every department in the government. And every program that's legislated to exist, its funding is in the appropriations bill. That is a monster. 23 pages is Trump change, especially since you can skim through most of it because like every section is like, this is how we define these terms.
Right.
This is how, and it's all boilerplate shit, right?
Yeah.
So what I thought was interesting and watch the Greenwald clip. This is Glenn Greenwald, of course, System Update, which mostly plays on Rumble, but he occasionally cross posts clips to YouTube. And this is one of those. And he goes on to kind of read sections of it. Highly recommend you at least look at duties and priorities, or at least read Rand Paul's statement, or watch Glenn's video and fucking don't have to read anything.
That's true.
It's true.
Don't read.
But it is interesting. It's interesting the way that law is constructed, and the way that if you really have a question about what, they said this, that, and the other thing, just go fucking read it in the bill, because that's what actually becomes law. It doesn't matter what the fuck they say in the media or whatever. Like, the only thing that matters is the thing they're making into law. The rest.
Well, and that follows
Go ahead.
That follows the rule of bullshit. Like they can say over and over again, the bill says this, the bill says this, and it may or may not say that, but like you have to expend so much effort proving whether it does or does not say that. And in the meantime, we're just like, it's this. So.
Yeah, I've heard that about some of the stuff that the media like blows out of proportion around Ron DeSantis, but like, I'm like, you know what? He could be completely correct, being like, no, it actually says this. It doesn't say what you say it says, right?
Yeah.
And I don't fucking care because the guy's a fucking scumbag anyway. And like, I'm not going to spend my time going through it. I did spend my time to read the purpose of this IG because I was curious. And really, it's just like, just to help. It's not really a watchdog so much as it is there to assist other departments.
I mean, it really seems like you just need a lead accountant in order to make sure our money is not disappearing into a void or the pockets of someone unseemly.
Bro, like one of my old college buddies is an accountant for the federal government. He's bounced between FDIC and Department of Treasury.
Having been in banking, FDIC still bothers me.
Yeah, but anyway, like the fucking federal government has a shit ton of accountants. And if you look at most, I mean, they'll have accountants that are just like for particular projects.
Yeah, I
like,
said
this project needs an accountant, because then they're responsible for dealing with that in and of itself, and then working to ensure that accounting information is passed along the chain accurately.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but it's crazy. Anyway, he goes on to read it. Highly recommend you learn more about it. And we're going to play another clip from the same video, just discussing just a bit more.
Yep.
It is exactly what it sounds like, a very narrow amendment that would do nothing other than create an inspector general model after the one that saved so much money and detected so much fraud and corruption in the war in Afghanistan. It would genuinely seem impossible that anyone would oppose this. And yet, it failed. It did not get implemented. The Senate blocked its enactment. Here you see the roll call vote. There were 51 yes votes. and 48 no votes. And because the Democrats invoked the Jim Crow racist filibuster, as they call it, 60 votes were needed for passage. They only got 51 votes, which is a majority of the senators, but that was 9 votes short needed for passage. So the Democrats not only voted no, but they invoked a filibuster to ensure there was no actual vote on this amendment. That's how badly they wanted to ensure that there was no oversight on the hundreds of billions of dollars they're going to end up spending in Ukraine. They've already spent $113 billion. So let's take a look at the vote, which I put here on the screen. It was essentially a party line vote with a couple.
Yeah, we're good.
We've already spent 113. He does go through them. So Angus King, independent from Maine. Sanders, independent from Vermont. Sinema, independent from Arizona. All voted yay. Nay, I'm sorry, no.
Tester from
Sinema voted yay. Tester voted yay. Ossoff voted yay. Yeah, and then everybody else voted nay. So,
oh man.
Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. What a fucking crazy thing. Yeah, so anyway, same shit we already know. Did we also include in the show notes a link to our past video on Ukraine?
Not yet.
Okay, great. Yeah, so a while back, we will include it in the show notes when this goes into YouTube as archived and not live. But we will include a link to a video we did about a year ago, I think. And we went through like Congressional Research Service, like documents showing down to the piece of equipment it was going to Ukraine. We it was one of our better deep dives, honestly.
Yeah.
We discussed the Ukraine as a pass-through agency for human trafficking and for weapons trafficking, among other things, and just kind of posed like we're sending so much weapons and cash to a country that has like one of the worst track records for honesty and transparency and integrity. And yet, knowing that your government, if you're an American, our government insists that it's better that we don't keep track of what we send. It's more important to just send it. So at any rate, now we're moving on to the Gray Zone. And the Gray Zone did an excellent accounting piece. It was Heather Kaiser was the name. I could not remember.
Yes.
And then she did the work, I think. And then Anya Parampel and Max Blumenthal, who are kind of like minds behind the Gray Zone. I think they did some kind of summarizing here.
Gotcha.
But the investigative stuff they attribute to Heather Kaiser, like in one of the first few paragraphs, that she was kind of the backbone of this investigation. I think they just helped with some of the writing stuff. At any rate, it's only a 10-minute read, so let's get going. Do you want to read most of it?
10 minutes.
So I was just going to move down to where they start breaking it down because I think that's where it's most interesting.
Okay.
So they're just kind of like, oh yeah, 4.5. Oh yeah, no, that summarizes it. I think they say it again a little lower.
A little lower. Okay.
It's impossible to calculate the total sum of U.S. tax dollars sent to Kyiv. Kaiser was able to perform an independent audit of Washington's proxy war in Ukraine through a careful search of open source data available on the U.S. government's official spending tracker. Kaiser reviewed all funding allocations in which Ukraine was listed as the, quote, place of performance, end quote, for fiscal years 2022 and 2023. Additionally, she discovered supplementary funds were sent to Kiev by listing Ukraine as the, quote, justification, end quote, for spending, rather than the location where the money was physically spent.
That's like fucking sending something to Venmo and just being like, Ukraine. In fact, everyone from now on, when you send on Venmo, just put Ukraine.
As you'll see, it actually funds quite a bit of the nonprofit industrial complex, where they're spending money for Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, Okay, calculating the
yeah.
total dollar amount that the U.S. has given to Ukraine is incredibly challenging for multitude of reasons. There is a lag reporting expenditures. Covert money given by the CIA won't be publicly disclosed, and direct military assistance in the form of military equipment is not calculated in the same manner as raw cash. So it doesn't go on that tracker that open source tracker she was
Right.
using. The Pentagon recently admitted to an accounting error revised up to $6.2 billion. Despite this, Kaiser submitted a request to the Department of Treasury asking them to disclose the total dollar amount of U.S. taxpayer support for Ukraine. Treasury has not responded at the time of publication because Treasury doesn't know.
Right.
And before you scroll down, bro, go back up. One of the more important parts of that is not obviously the CIA doesn't disclose. There's always a lag in reporting. There's also a lag in payments. Contracts don't get paid like necessarily at the time the service is rendered or the
Right.
goods is transferred.
They actually typically get paid when they're finished.
Yeah, no, and even then, like the contract work I was doing in Idaho a few weeks ago, I'll probably get paid at the beginning of like in the next week.
Right.
It's like 3 weeks.
First
I'm
and
not
15th.
getting paid because the contract paperwork has to go through. And oftentimes with contracting, there's questions. They need to make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted.
All the alcohol at TGIFs was actually for, your meals.
No, they pay us a flat rate and then we decide how to spend our money. And so mostly you spend money on employee fucking food and beverage.
That's pretty nice.
It's fucking rad.
So many places you got to provide receipts. Fuck receipts.
No, you don't need to provide receipts when it's the fucking CEO and COO that are making the charges.
Yep.
I mean, the receipt is the fucking credit card bill, honestly.
Yeah.
We don't itemize, although I think they would be smart to institute some kind of per diem or something. Like we'll cover meals and drinks and all that stuff, but
yeah,
we have a hard cap, right? $50 a day.
$50 a day per person. Yeah.
That's, or I guess $15 or $20 a meal would be reasonable. So what's that? 60, 65, 70 bucks a day. At any rate, we're not talking about that. We're talking about this. I did think, I did want to point out this accounting error because a lot of people are like, oh, look at that. The government can find extra money for Ukraine when it wants. So the way that the Ukraine aid as far as military equipment, this is my understanding. I could be slightly off, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on. Pardon me. The way it is that when they send the weapons, they say it has a particular dollar amount, right? And Congress in the spending bill is authorizing a particular dollar amount. So what they did, because they had sent that dollar amount, is they're like, oh, we overvalued these weapons. They were actually only worth this much. So in Congress's allocation, we still can send more stuff and not exceed the amount they told us to send. And so it's literally, they just basically, it's like saying a capital asset or inventory. They just said, okay, we said it had this much value, but now we're going to say it had less value because we're still all that would authorize us to send more. Does that make sense?
Yes. It kind of reminds me of like kind of the opposite of something I was reading about, how charities will donate art, valuing it very high, knowing that they probably can't sell it for very much. And so they get a write off the higher value though, because it was appraised at 50 million or something like that.
Yeah, and wasn't Trump accused of doing a lot of that shit in New York and New Jersey where he like basically like to shelter money from taxes, I think was the reasoning, was like 1 year he would report a building was this worth this much, and the next year if he needed to, he'd say it was worth a lot less and then like write off the difference or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was all just to kind of balance the taxes, right? Like,
yeah,
I'll just say I lost money on it, but then next year I make the money back or whatever.
Right.
Because it's completely arbitrary and it would be very difficult to account for every fucking parcel in the country as far as that goes, right? Like to just get into the absolute weeds on that shit. That's why, I'm not the hugest fan of a value added tax, but honestly, like it makes sense because you're like, I'm taxing productive activity, whether it's labor or machines.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be the only tax because it tends to favor still the wealthy. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Oh yeah,
better than nothing.
100%. Value
Better
added
than nothing.
taxes can screw. I mean, most consumption based taxes screw
Are gonna,
poor.
yeah, exactly.
But Georgism, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but they propose only really taxing property.
Can you roll on for about 30 seconds?
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about Georgism? Sure.
Do it.
My understanding of Georgism, and I subscribe to the Henry George Institute, Henry George Foundation, something like that. Anyway, it's kind of a think tank that examines his work, examines his ideas and concepts as they're applicable to current situations, and current kind of economic trends or whatnot. Anyway, it's proposed basically tax property because if you don't own property, then you're not paying that tax. But also because like most social improvements, like roads and sewer lines and water lines and all that stuff, improves the value of the property that's owned. So a classic example of this is like rather than charging everybody in the city through like a sales tax for a new subway station or whatever, or a new station at the light rail, you would tax the properties that are within like a kind of certain distance that would see the most property appreciation on those parcels because of the improvement in infrastructure. And then you would charge a little less a little further out and a little less a little further out, but you would only be charging the people who own land. So whereas right now, I think the classic example when we were talking about a split roll in California was like, why the fuck is Disney, like one of the largest corporations in the world, paying such a small tax on their sprawling whatever 80 acre or 100 acre 120 acre amusement park in Anaheim, because they bought that land a long time ago, haven't sold it, and so their property taxes are capped at whatever 1970 whatever for Prop 13. And so that's something that comes up all the time. But if you said, hey, landowners have to pay for land for improvements every time they would do a freeway that brought more traffic to Disneyland's property, they would have to pay a greater portion of the taxes rather than distributing the tax load on infrastructure that tends to benefit private business more than individual citizens or residents. They would therefore carry a bigger burden in taxes. And that to me makes sense. I don't know. It makes sense. Even as a property owner, like it just makes sense that the person who gets the most out of it, right? But then again, as a property owner who has zero intent on using my land as a speculative token, then it doesn't benefit me because I'm like, it doesn't matter how much the property appreciates because that doesn't matter to me. But for most people, it
Well, because
does.
you're staying there, you're not going to sell it. Yeah. So Georgism, man, I had no idea that there was that much complexity to deluxe apartments in the sky.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's just how I understand some of his ideas, and not all of them. But the basic it was be a land tax,
Yeah.
and rather than sales taxes or value added taxes or
Right.
other various kinds of taxes, he'd just be like, no, it's most public improvements benefit landowners.
Yep. And I came back in at the end of it where you were talking about that, and I find that interesting because just earlier today, while picking up what's in this tumbler, we were talking about how the roads are shut down and being repaved, and the only reason they're being shut down and repaved is because a groove had worn on one side of the road and a whole bunch of potholes were on the other, and they're opening a brand new multi-level motel or hotel. I don't know which it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right there. And so, like, it's very clear that the whole reason this happened is because they did a whole bunch of road surgery in order to provide all the electrical lines. And with the existing damage, it just wasn't going to be good enough for the high class customers who would be coming to whatever the hell the hotel is. And the city now has to pay for all that rather than the actual hotel it's moving in.
Yeah.
Happens all the time.
Well, the city of Chico passed a sales tax against, like, I was always against increasing sales taxes to pay for shit. And at first, that sales tax didn't go through because they're like, we're going to use it for public safety. And then everybody got mad and said, no, you're going to fucking tax us a penny more on every dollar we spend in the city limits. And then you're going to spend it just to fucking plug the hole in your police pension. Right?
Yeah.
And so it didn't pass. And then they came back and made a promise that they were going to raise this tax, but it was going to be for roads. And everybody's so fucking mad at the condition of the roads
Yeah.
that it finally passed. And what did they do when they got to the very first year of allocating that extra sales tax money? They did spend about 60% of it on roads.
Oh, good. Oh, that's actually impressive.
But then they spent it on other things like a tear gas dispensing robot for use by the police. I wish I was joking. It's called a breaching robot.
Okay.
Why
do you need a robot for that? Humans need that job.
Link fence.
Humans need that job. Human police officers need the job of
they say it makes
tear gassing
safer, and they don't get rid of any police jobs. In fact, they create police jobs because that robot takes one to ensure that it's operational, and 2 or possibly 3 to operate it.
Yeah.
Because you have to have, someone might be in their off period. So you need someone else that's trained to do it, right? So it actually creates more jobs or more opportunities for the cops that are there to get paid more because they have that extra certification. They get a little extra pay. That's how it works in the fire department too.
Hey, I'm a robot surgeon. I'll take that job.
My point, another one is they spent like, what was it? $600,000 on a new fence because they wanted a nice block wall around the police department and the city O&M department, the public works department. They have a yard that's like adjacent to the police station for where they park all the trucks and shit, right? When everybody goes home, and do maintenance and shit. Anyway, they wanted to do like this kind of like, rather than having one with a chain link fence and one with a kind of like wrought iron fence around part of it, they wanted to make like a whole nice big enclosed like government complex. They're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on that. And we're like, what about your promise that you were going to use it for roads? They're like, we are using most of it for roads. Like, well, when people said, yes, I'll pay another cent for fucking sales tax, they said that because you said we're going to use it on roads.
Right.
And they didn't. And they also hired new police officers. So not only are they just saying like, okay, one time, I talked to one of the city councilors. He actually wanted me to go through the budget with him and just help him find some of the things because he knows I know the budget really well.
Right.
And so we sat down at a coffee shop and was going through it and looking at it. And I was like, they're using it to like renovate some of the fire departments, like because their bunkhouses are just kind of outdated is what the language said. Like, so you're remodeling a functional space.
Yeah.
With that money. But the hiring of the extra officers is like some of the worst because you're like, once you hired them, now it doesn't matter who gets elected later. You put them in the impossible position of you can't use that money for anything other than those staff now, unless somebody is put in the position where they're firing cops, which like no one does. There's not a person that gets elected that fires cops.
Well,
not even cops that murder black people don't get fucking fired. Sorry, go ahead.
Don't talk about our mayor like that. Anyway, if
yikes, go ahead.
If it, oh shit, now I forgot. That was too good.
What
were you talking about just a second ago? I'm gonna try.
You gonna try and shake it free with a gummy?
No. What were you talking about just a second ago?
Oh, just how politicians won't get rid of cops and how they took that money that was supposed to be being used for roads, and they said no. From here and every year thereafter, we're going to spend 15% of what we expect to get every year on more police.
Well, and that's super tough too because like they have the strongest union in the U.S. And so, like, God forbid you are in the ire of the fucking police union. Like, you get your town fucking shut down, no doubt.
Yeah, man. Cops scare me, man, because, like, as soon as shit really goes fucking sideways, they're going to be the fucking, you think, like, Mad Max? Like, if they were to make an accurate Mad Max, shit would have hit the fan. People would be pushed into this deep, deep poverty, and it would be fucking cops. Rolling around, shaking people down for fucking money and this, that, and the other thing. They would be wealthy and they would have their compounds and they would just be cruising around.
Well, because they are the people that have no problem.
Yep.
They're the people that have no problem using violence. They are the people that are well exercised in it. They are the people that have conditioned themselves to just resort to that as the first means of resolving conflicts. And so necessarily they become the rulers. They become the warlords. You can look at any country that has been destabilized and you can say, there's a strong man who will stop at nothing to acquire everything. That's what you get. And that's what you're going to get when everything shuts down here in the United States. You're going to get cops fucking running roughshod.
Yep. And when the institution self-selects for sociopaths, you know,
I can't get a job. What the fuck?
Right? And that's because you're not a sociopath, man. You're like, I can be if I need to be.
I'm too nice. Do you need me to shut off all the emotions? It's cool. I'll fucking run over people.
Yeah, give us like a really distant, empty stare that looks like you're capable of like killing minorities.
Oh, there's some. No, I can't do it.
You're fired. You're hired. You can do that. You're hired.
I hired.
At any rate, man, we went on a sidetrack, and that's fine. But we got about 15 minutes left, so I would like to end on the hour. So anyway, that 6.2 was just a fucking accounting trick, and god damn it, man. God damn it. Like, it's just like, oh, no, we overvalued those things. We can still send them more. We haven't exceeded the allocation yet. And so it's literally, they could just be like, everything is $1.
Yeah.
All that missile that cost us fucking $150 million or $150,000 to make one munition, that's only worth $1 because it's old.
Mm-hmm.
So they give it to Ukraine and it's only worth $1 so they can send how many of them? It's just a fucking lie.
Well, not only that, but again, I will refer back to the video I can't even remember where I said the minute you sell one munition or give it away, you have to replace it. Like, we're not going to reduce our arms load.
No, hell no.
We're going to keep buying. And so, like, okay, cool. You know, we gave away all this really old stuff to Ukraine and immediately bought like top of the line, multi-million-dollar, whatever it is that we gave away.
Yeah, 100%. Can you come back to the article?
Yes, the cantina.
No, whatever the Gray Zone article is.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
No worries.
I did want to go through a little bit more of that. Scroll. I wanted to get to where there is a headline in bold that says the value. And
nothing is okay.
Stop.
Oh, it is bold. Wow.
Yeah, no, scroll up a bit more.
Okay.
So this is
beneficiaries of Ukraine's
aid. So I thought this was interesting. So U.S. aid awarded to Ukraine throughout the fiscal years, a lot of money.
21.8 billion.
Yep. Mysteriously, a portion of U.S. aid funding earmarked for Kiev was sent to Kenya and Ethiopia via other agencies, with the award description stating projects in Africa were partially funded with response funds and Ukraine supplemental funds.
Why? What does that have to do with anything? That sounds like it's called pork barrel politics to me.
More than that, dude. I think that some of the fucking weapons are making their way into these countries that are
on the verge of democratization, shall we say?
Yeah.
And
have some kind of resource or asset. More importantly, this is one of the, I think, most striking uses of U.S. money is the next paragraph. U.S. aid sent $4.5 billion to Ukraine via the World Bank to pay off Kiev's debts and fund various social programs, including government pensions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read that again.
That sounds
U.S.
like
aid, the U.S. government sent $4.5 billion to Ukraine via the World Bank to pay off their debt and to fund social programs, including government pensions.
So I don't know how much 4.5 billion could do in the United States for pensions or social programs or anything like that. I have to assume it's a lot, since like paying off the entire world, you know, just like living a decent life, having food and shelter and clothing is supposed to be like 42 billion.
Yeah.
But it seems like, it seems like maybe, maybe This is 1/10 of the way towards making the world a livable place.
Yeah. So the World Bank is basically an arm of Euro-American economic imperialism.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, we help countries fund infrastructure, but really it's a way to force Western banks, it's a vehicle for Western banks to exploit most of the world, especially the developing world, right?
My understanding is it's very similar to the banana republics, where you basically like grow this, give us this. If you don't, we will foreclose on your country.
Some of the concrete examples I know, because I've read about them in academic journals, is that being the case in Eastern Africa, where they helped fund like some hydropower projects and like some roads and some other stuff. And then they were basically compelled. I think France was the sponsor on most of that. And so then they compelled them to produce peanuts for peanut oil for French agricultural concerns. And they were forced to do it even though it was bad for the soil, and it caused like additional soil degradation. And then poverty, because people are having to grow this commodity crop to pay back the debt, but then aren't feeding them, you're dedicating less land to actually feeding themselves, reducing their food security, among other things. But then the follow-up sentences, U.S. aid made a total of $21 billion worth of direct payments to the World Bank in fiscal 22 and 23, respectively.
So we just go and debt ourselves to pay off other people's debt in order to, I think curry is not strong enough a word, but basically buy favor, it seems like. Am I reading it right? I feel like I'm reading it right.
I think so. I just think it's fascinating. They fucking owed the World Bank money. Ukraine owed the World Bank money, and we gave them a debt jubilee.
Yeah.
But we can't forgive fucking student loan debt. I'm not sure how much it would cost, but isn't student loan like almost $1 trillion fucking dollars?
Right now. Looking it up, man. 1.78 trillion. It's more than $1 trillion. God, it's almost $2 trillion. You hear me? I'm slurring my words. $2 trillion.
Well, I don't know. It's a lot of fucking money, but like we could also debt jubilee a lot of other people. Like we could have even not done a debt jubilee. We could have simply suspended debt payments, and it would have made people's lives a lot fucking better during fucking COVID.
Yeah.
Right. If you just suspended all debt payments, then the landlord can't collect your rent. You're saying you can't collect rent, but you're also not putting them on the hook to pay the bank.
Exactly. And that's the thing that people, don't take into account. It's like, well, if the landlord doesn't get money from the tenants, how does he get money to pay the bank? Well, the bank doesn't get it paid. Well, how does the bank, get away with not paying their interest rates? Because it's to the fucking Federal Reserve, numbnuts.
And because they're the fucking banking industry, and we've given them trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars over the last decade and a half.
And they can fucking suck it. They can suck a dick, and maybe a few of them can go underwater. If Bank of America went out of business, I don't think anybody would give a shit.
Let's scroll down, because that was one of the more egregious ones. I thought it was interesting. They were settling their debt.
Do you like charts?
Do I like charts? Yes.
I guess we could stop on the chart if you like, or we could go further down.
Sure.
Okay. I don't know what this chart says.
Transactions over time. This graph shows
count of new awards.
Trends for all transactions to this recipient.
Okay.
So basically, we've given like a little bit of money to Ukraine. It looks like after what year is that? 2014?
2012 was the big point. 2014 was about equal. Decrease. So apparently we just needed to find ways to basically... Can governments dodge taxes? Because this looks like tax dodging 101 if you were a business or a very rich individual.
Profit and spread it out over.
Yeah. And then it amortizes right down here. Yeah. You're like, oh, look, we invested very heavily, and then it degraded over time, and so we don't have to pay as many taxes due to the degradation of our equipment. It looks like the same fucking chart.
Let's scroll down a bit more.
Okay.
Scroll. There's so much here. Please go through it. U.S. aid allocated $500 to Pulaski, and then you have
go on.
Yeah. Just foreign policy to support foreign policy objectives. Like it's that fucking vague, and it just presents itself so many opportunities for corruption
I'm
and
gonna
for
okay.
theft.
So, Steve, would you like to join me in some sort of, foreign policy aid where we just sit around and play video games, together and try to involve people in Ukraine?
Yeah, it's like morale.
Yeah, yeah.
Morale for the
We
Ukrainian troop
we
fund.
are building.
Give us $500,000 to fucking.
We'll fucking play CS:GO together. It'll be great.
It'll be great. Yeah, look at this. To strengthen the International Center for Ukrainian Victory. That sounds like a fucking front company for some fucking oligarch that's probably like, using the money to buy a private jet or something. I don't know. I guess it was only $500,000.
Well, they definitely have to buy a private jet because right now, like those really big boats are under attack by orcas. Just stay out of the ocean. They're getting bigger and more dangerous. And
so the Pulaski Foundation got a little from USAID, and in the next paragraph, the State Department gave them some too.
Yep.
Another $75,000.
That's almost nothing.
Right, but I mean,
I'll take it.
Sure.
I'll say that it would relieve all of my debt and leave me with so much money left over.
Sure. Scroll down a bit more.
Peace Manifesto. Here we go.
There you go, right here. $3 million to the World Health Organization to improve health outcomes in drought-affected areas in Ethiopia.
Nestle water. Almost
Basically.
guarantee it.
Yeah. This one's interesting too. Chemonics International, $30.9 million. A private for-profit aid contractor. The businessman who founded it said he wanted to have his own CIA. Don't we all want our own CIA?
I don't. That's a lot to manage.
So they made $600 million from USAID in Afghanistan.
Oh my God!
And they funded the Syrian White Helmets, which was a front group to basically they were involved in that chemical bombing and all that other shit. What were you gonna say?
I was not far off. Nestle sold its majority share in Ethiopian bottled water in 2016. I think.
Why are you scrolling up?
Oh, because I think the Ethiopian thing happened well after. 2022. So 6 years later. So basically, Nestle drained the fucking country dry of water, and now we're using international money to give them water.
Of course. I don't doubt that.
I'm not too surprised. I'm just really surprised it's that easy to quickly search for the cause and the result.
Then you will love one of the ones that's a little lower down.
Oh, okay.
As far as like the clear progression and transparency.
What do we have? How far are we?
We're looking at this packed public health system of Ukraine. So we, can't fund basic health care in the United States, but we're giving money there for Ukrainian healthcare system.
Goddamn. Including vulnerable and marginalized populations. I wonder how homogenous they are. Oh, well.
Yeah, they're fairly diverse. I think there's a lot of various kind of tribal or ethnic affiliations in that part. That's why Yugoslavia was such a fucking... I mean, that's not like right next door, but like it's in this similar region, that part of Southeastern Europe. And there's a lot of migration too.
Gender equality.
A lot of people just, because it's fucking, it's woke imperialism, right?
I don't know how I feel about this. What?
Right. And is it not ridiculous? They're spending, what was it, $20.9 million, which isn't a lot of money in the grand scheme of things.
No, very small.
20.7. But like, they couch it in that language. You know what would be better for the rights of women and girls? So if we didn't give any money to Ukraine at all and sued for peace immediately, because Ukraine is notorious, as we've discussed before, it is like the human trafficking capital of the fucking world.
That's right.
Maybe there might be a place in Asia or maybe a Middle Eastern country that might edge it out, but at least of Europe, it's definitely the human trafficking capital of fucking Europe.
So if you're looking up Ukrainian porn on your favorite porn site and you feel like you're supporting Ukraine, no.
Or brides, bro.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. I feel like that peaked a while ago. Is it back?
I don't think it's back in as big of a way.
Okay.
I don't think a lot of the younger ones are into it.
Oh yeah. Well, why the fuck?
Yeah.
Like
most,
that's the thing
most,
is they all have YouTube, so they can learn how to cook, clean, and fix things for themselves. They don't need a bride.
they don't
And
need
they
a
don't
bride
need a
because
spouse.
we have YouTube. Goddamn it! I
And they don't need a
figure out how to
groom.
cook a piece of salmon.
Look, if it's just about taking care of the house, I can do that myself. Damn it!
I
All the
learned
others-
hacks for taking the children's marker off the wall.
All the other stuff is a lot cheaper. Is a lot cheaper on Craigslist.
I thought this next one was interesting.
Yeah.
$25 million to Horizon Capital Growth Fund for Kenya.
Private
Or no, for
equity
that was
fund.
for high tech. Remember you were talking about how Ukraine also had like a fairly sizable illicit software market?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there they go. We are spending $25 million in government money to facilitate that.
Look at you remembering something from like episode 3.
I have a fucking uncanny memory. I've told you. I think it's because I ate a bunch of mushrooms when I was younger.
No, I waited till I was much older, so my memory's shot.
Yeah, you didn't get the benefit of forging a synapses relationships or whatever.
Do you have do you have a mine castle?
Perhaps. UNICEF project in Kenya. Scroll down. University of Georgia. Interesting, in Atlanta. Okay.
Wow, for a second I thought they were talking about the country, but no.
Yeah. This one's fascinating. 5.48 million to for aluminum boats. What do you think they're doing? Probably smuggling something.
Ooh, can you turn into or turn it upside down, sneak in?
Probably moving stuff. Yeah, either across
38-foot full cabin. Wow, that's a huge boat.
What, a 38-foot?
Yeah, I mean, for like personal use, that's huge.
Yeah.
Atlantic. Oh, look at this. The Department of Defense has transferred $4.75 million to Atlantic Diving Supply Incorporated.
As of February 23rd, you know what happened approximately 6 months before February 2023?
Let's see, 5, 7, July 3rd. Oh, right before the 4th of July.
No, it was in September, I think, of 2022. Nord Stream bombing. The pipeline.
No. August, September, October, November, December, January. Oh, I'm one off. Damn. Okay.
I said about 6 months. I didn't know exactly, bro. But I know September's about 6 months before February, right?
Yeah. Well, I did 14 minus 7.
Nord Stream bombing.
Yeah.
And it looks like if you go through the money, you're like, who's Atlantic Diving Supply?
Who is Atlantic Diving Supply? That's a great question. Because I think we might want to learn.
Stay on this one real quick.
Let's
move just a little bit further, and then we'll look at that. It looked for EOD and Sapper equipment. They're in Atlantic Diving Supply is a military contractor, of course.
Wow.
And then they go into
this is the most technical of sentences. Exclusively used to blow things up or clean up explosives.
Yep. Yeah. And so then they add, I'm sure this is either Anya or Max, when a company like this is tasked with a highly specific delivery of explosives gear to any foreign nation, including Ukraine, it should prompt questions about the mission, particularly when U.S. intelligence is blaming Ukraine's military for attacking the Nord Stream pipelines without the knowledge of President Zelensky. The payment date does not necessarily correlate with the date of delivery from the vendor. In other words, the equipment could have been delivered at a prior date, which is what we were saying. Government contracts sometimes take a little time to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Luke Hiller, the founder of Atlantic Diving Supply, paid a $20 million settlement in 2019 to resolve charges he defrauded the Pentagon by falsely claiming he was a small business, even though he's one of the top 25 largest military contractors in the company, or in the country, rather. Freudian slip. And then
truth bomb.
If you look a little further down, in 2021, he raked in a massive $33 billion contract under the same $33 billion, prompting for fresh accusations of fraud.
Oh, I can't bold it. Darn.
What's that?
Oh, I said, how do I bold that? Oh, I can't bold it.
It's okay. So he made a fuck ton of money, and he currently owns a $13 million mega yacht in the Cayman Islands. Scroll out, bro. Come on, man.
Where we are.
Oh, you lost it. It's fine.
There we go.
He has a bunch of fucking nice shit.
Really?
Yeah. He's got a $24 million worth of beachfront property in Hawaii, 2 Bahamas-based companies with murky operations, according to the Project on Government Oversight.
Oh, he thinks he's a king.
And then continuing on, they paid a bunch of money to BAE for guns. The U.S. International Defense Development Finance Corporation, $25 million again to Horizon Capital. And then
Also, that's not your typical gun. That's a fucking cannon.
Those are cannons, yeah. But I said guns. And littoral, right? They're for small boats. So the guns for their aluminum boats.
Yeah.
They were helping build them a navy, is what they were doing.
Yeah.
Because remember, the navy that they had in the Black Sea was Russia's navy at Sevastopol on Crimea, which is the whole reason they fucking invaded Crimea after the U.S. did a coup in 2014. Just to keep everything in chronological and contextual order. Scroll down just a little bit more. Federal Trade Commission to a single individual, $882,000 in exchange for technical assistance. I mean, what's that? Private equity firms. Look at that. They sent money to $1.5 million to a fund to relocate businesses to the country of Georgia. Georgia does not border Ukraine, and it's not a primary location for Ukrainian refugee resettlement. So basically, they're saying certain corporations in the Ukraine, we're going to help them move over to Georgia. So we're helping fucking how many businesses shut down with the fucking COVID shutdown?
Dozens.
Tens of thousands.
Oh, okay.
I think it was tens of thousands of small businesses fucking went bankrupt or went into early retirement because of COVID. And yet it's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but we're giving money to Ukrainian businesses.
Well, it's not just that it's not a lot of money. It's like people whose lives were affected very negatively and didn't need to be.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So the big one I wanted to focus on there was that Atlantic tithing, because I thought it was fascinating that, like, right there in the accounting record, there's that not quite a smoking gun, but highly suspicious fucking payments to a company that specializes in blowing shit up underwater. And so I just kind of wanted to provide an example, because what we do here is use critical thinking, but we also don't just like repeat things over and over because they're cool to say or whatever. We want to show you how that is. So we come with receipts and we help build your safety deposit box full of receipts. So when you're having this argument with someone in the future, you can be like, nah, look at this fucking company. They got however many built $33 billion in 2021 in government contracts and aluminum boats and guns and shit and cannons or whatever. And then I just really wanted to look at this about us for this Atlantic diving supply, mostly because I wanted to draw attention to the revolving door.
Request a quote. They don't even provide prices up front.
They do not.
They're
a government contractor, bro.
I really despise that. Like, tell me how much your shit costs.
Well, just scroll down to all the people in the suits.
Oh, well, I kind of just wanted to point out that, like, Luke Hillier or Hillier is the son of company founder. So, Nepo baby.
Oh, yeah.
Are we looking to all of this right here? How it's absolutely chock-a-block full of U.S. Marine Corps retired, senior executive service retired of the
Look at that.
of Defense.
Brigadier General, Rear Admiral.
Rear Admiral,
what, an
Lieutenant Governor. Say again?
Is that a 3-star or a 2-star?
Fuck, dude, it's been too long. I've tried to forget it all, man. I think it's
Rear Admiral is right below Admiral, or no?
It's at least an 07.
Okay, but I mean, he is a general level staff.
Yeah,
Admiral is.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. Lieutenant General.
Yeah.
Scroll down. See those other two guys?
Oh, these guys in uniform.
Lieutenant General, Major General.
Man, he's the very model of a modern. And then we got a whole bunch of things where it's just like CEO,
all their staff. Fuck them.
Yeah.
I wanted to show the advisory board.
Yeah.
Because in the military industrial complex, a big problem is that we don't prohibit people who like, I don't know if you know what a fucking 08 makes when they retire at 30 years.
Last I checked, it was like $120,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's between like $10,000 and $12,000 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was back in 2005. So,
and then this is what happens is they go get put on advisory boards. And guess what they do? They leave, but they still have friends who respect them and subordinates. Indeed, most of these guys have subordinates that are either in their position or a similar position and ranked up, or even are still at, in lower echelons in the Pentagon, in each of the respective departments. I mean, these people were at the very, very top of the military hierarchy.
Absolutely. And you best believe
that 2-star general is like, there's very few 4-star generals. Like, to get a general star is a big fucking deal. To have 2 of them is a really big fucking deal.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, shit, just to get to be a full bird colonel, which is the one right below a 1-star general, is a really big deal.
Yeah.
Like, there are many of them in the service because they generally are a command for a base. But how many is that? And how many are in the Pentagon, too? Because there's a bunch in the Pentagon. But it winds up being like several dozen or maybe a couple hundred out of the service of hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
And like 1,000 of them are a colonel or above. Whatever. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, like the captain who's in charge of a submarine is actually typically a commander. So only an 05. So you're in charge of a multi-billion-dollar vessel and you're only an 05. And so these people have made it like past that to where they're in charge of an aircraft carrier or perhaps even a small fleet and beyond. And so they've already got that $10,000 to $12,000 a month or a paycheck. And here they can just write a check when they're like, hey, I'm leaving the board of advisors for ADS. It's guaranteed all kinds of our government contracts. Who wants to buy my spot?
Yeah, dude.
Pretty fucking simple.
Yeah, and then they can just go and talk to the people they know because they have they bring them in not because they have some kind of expertise in the system.
Mm-hmm.
Right? No, they bring them in because they have personal relationships that can help push these $33 billion contracts through the channels.
Some congressman asks his buddy, hey, what do I do? Rear Admiral says,
let me talk to this guy. He knows his military stuff. You need military advice. Talk to this retired.
Look at all these badges.
Like, you know what you need? You need to give my company $33 billion. And then they're like, okay.
Yeah.
It's a fucking grift, bro. $33 billion. Billion. 33 billion.
That's 9 billion short of solving world hunger, for reference.
It's a fucking, and that's just to one company.
Yeah.
And you can tell how fat these fucking fat cats are when we're going to scroll through all their civilian staff, not their board of advisors, but everybody else. I mean, the company deals with something fairly niche, and I know they're a big company, but like, how many fucking executives do you need? I don't think I've worked for a company with that many executives.
21, apparently.
Not even a multi-billion-dollar fucking global services corporation.
But, they will go on to evoke the image of, the people out on the front line in order to sell it all.
Yep. The core values of our company, core, C-O-R-P. God bless America.
And
no, I just really wanted to point out the kind of revolving door and how transparent it is and how much money they make. And that they're also probably, that may be right there, transparently.
Yeah.
That I was making the joke about the shade, right? Shady dealings or whatever. Or
you
really
just
being
transparent. Don't lie.
And not even trying to hide the fact that that the studios are trying to suppress labor by cutting fucking trees in the middle of summer. But
you don't need to hide anything when you're rich. You just do it and apologize to no one.
Yeah. So I think we can cue music and take it on out.
Cue music?
Hopefully we didn't fuck it up this time. We've been trying so hard.
Talk
Zach
to
Bach
me
has been trying so hard.
before.
Give me a good old the Wookiee yell. You want more, babe? Oh. All right,
Do you hear
folks.
it? Do y'all hear it?
I do. Finally, which is great because then we can tell the volume. Hopefully,
We can.
So today we just showed you a brief video and had a short discussion about the entertainers' strike and the shady shit that the studios do to screw labor and try and make it more difficult or more inhumane or more uncomfortable to be on the picket line, just like they're going to try and starve them out of their houses, as we covered before. A really heinous shit, the kind of shit where you're like, I wish maybe the government would use some of this Ukraine money, send it via a third party in Kenya, all the way to put aluminum boats and big cannons right off the 155 millimeter cannons outside of Los Angeles to teach these studio executives a lesson. After that, we discussed Congress not wanting to hold anyone accountable for how the money gets spent in Ukraine, and then we discussed how some of that money is getting spent and some of the things that make you go, huh? Do you have any final thoughts on what we talked about today?
Yeah. Let's all make friends with people in high places so we too can get way more money than we deserve.
Most of these companies start like that. Remember, have you ever seen that movie War Dogs?
Yes.
With Jonah Hill and who else? I forget. Yeah, apparently based on a true story. It was an entertaining movie. And the fact that it's like, yeah, that's all it took was just some people who were able to bullshit their way into basically being fucking super rich by exploiting military contracts.
And remember,
then when they got caught doing something wrong, they were banned from competing for contracts for like a few years.
Right.
And for the war in Afghanistan lasted 20 fucking years. And we moved right into the Ukraine. So these contract companies haven't even had to take a fucking break, man. With that, we'd like to remind folks, when liberty dies, it dies.
It's not who you know, it's what you know. No, wait, the opposite. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
It's who you know.
With thunder
and hopefully
applause.
you're a retired general on the board of a wealthy military contracting company.
And if you're not, why have you been wasting your life? Get on it, bro.
Get on that shit, man.
With
All right,
thunderous
man.
applause.
Remember, folks, when liberty dies, it dies.
With thunderous applause.
Bye-bye.
That Yoda.